around digitization and digital inclusion in particular. And the whole idea is to provide serious social science perspective into digital innovations and scaling, so that we actually get to effective innovations and effective scale that actually creates impact in the lives of poor people. So from that perspective, BIGD has started as a series of work around digitization, and this is a part of that. Aside from this, we also have a competitive research grant that BIGD is managing, which is a grant that is investment from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and that particular competitive research grant is going to be trying to accelerate our evidence base around the causal mechanisms through which digital financial service and causes women's economic empowerment, and through that, kind of inform design of digital financial services and its delivery. So this particular one is on the G2P ecosystem. We're going to be looking at the demand and supply side. Just to tell you a bit, this is the third in series. So just to remind people who have been part of or have not been part of, the other two presentations that we did. The first presentation is the first two presentation is based on a rural household survey that we have done on over 6,500 households. It's a divisionally representative sample where we basically wanted to understand the state of digital literacy and also access to different services. And the first two presentations that we had drew directly from that survey. So the first one tried to essentially construct a digital literacy index and conceptualize digital literacy in the context of Bangladesh. It's an early attempt, and that's what we tried to do in the first webinar series, first webinar of this series. The second one, which we had a few weeks back, took cue from the first one, and we looked at, in the second one, Dr. Shahadat looked at the internet domain of the whole digital access, and looked at access skills and usage around the internet, internet enabled mobile services, and what emerged from that, the second study, is that the access seems to be quite it's increasing and is rapidly increasing, but because the operational skills is still quite low, so the usage that we basically get is particularly shallow. And there seems to be very strong gender and rural-urban gap in the whole internet domain aspect. So that's what we got from the second second study. This one in particular now takes, again, this one takes advantage of the survey that we did, but asks questions with respect to the G2P aspect of the mobile financial services, and again takes the whole COVID context. So basically asking the question, what is happening during the COVID context? The G2P payment is, of course, a critical service during the COVID context. And we leveraged on the survey that we had of 6,500 households to draw a subsample of 4,000 households, of which 3,163 households were ultimately successful through a phone survey. We wanted to look at the demand and some aspects of the supply side to really understand what is happening within the G2P ecosystem with respect to, especially during this COVID context. So I think we've got some really sort of exciting and interesting and I think useful results that can at least start a conversation. The researchers, the academic, the PIs of this work has been Dr. Zulkarin Jahangir, Research Fellow at BIGD, and Abdullah Hassan Safir, Senior Research Associate in BIGD. We have had other researchers actually helping them. We have had Simab, who is here, who is a Research Associate who help, and Saiful, another research associate who help this team. We have a group of really, great panelists, I think, and very rich perspective we will get. We've got people coming from the world of policy, people coming from the world of global practice and policy, and also people coming more directly from the world of practice. So we're going to, I'm really hoping we're going to have a very rich conversation and discussion following the presentation. So I'll introduce the panelists later when we come to that. But at this stage, I would like to welcome everyone and request Dr. Zulkarnain and Abdullah Hassan Safir to give the presentation, please. You have about 40 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imran Bhai. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, welcome everyone. I want to start by thanking my teammates. Safir is presenting with me here, Saiful and Simab, and also the panelists and people actually joining us here in this webinar. As Imran Bhai already mentioned, that our study is basically looking at, the objective of the study is basically looking at two aspects of, in COVID context. One is we're looking at how the government to people cash transfer happens through MFS services, and also try to understand some of the bottlenecks, and also is anyway, some of the aspects we can flesh out where we can streamline the processes further or maximize the opportunity. Now, few of the backgrounds. One is, as we all understand, being in this seminar, that mobile financial service is basically providing banking services, using mobile phone, which allows people to use their banking transactions. If you look at Bangladesh scenario, we have seen that how it kind of increased from 2014, which is 3%, and then 35%, 19, and 2020 in COVID, we'll see that how it kind of further increased over a period of time as well. In worldwide, I mean, globally in COVID context, we have seen the similar sort of trend where mobile financial service has actually became the main media for transactions. Now, if we look at the trend in Bangladesh, pre-COVID and COVID situation, and particularly in mobile financial services, we can see that if you look at the first one, where we see that, number of registered clients in LAC, and comparing it with the number of active account in LAC, we can see that after COVID, there is an increase in active account members, which means that obviously the people who are actually had account but not been active, they started using it in April. So COVID had this influence of having more active account members in MFS. Similarly, if you look at the percentage of active client, which we all obviously see that from April onward is actually going upward. So this is where we see that people are actually getting more active and using MFS services. And if you look at the average daily transaction, we see the similar sort of trend when it's actually going upward, which is the daily transaction core, which actually surpassed 2,000 crore in BDT by July, started from April. But when we looked at into the average daily transactions per active account users, we can see that from April, which was 344, which kind of increased in July to 476, which kind of says that how as an individual transactions pattern is also kind of changed in post-COVID, and I mean in the COVID context. So if we see that in this situation where in COVID, obviously the government's priority was to see that how they can support the the disadvantaged people, and particularly in safety net. If you see the changes that happened in 2009, it was 13%, where it kind of increased, the safety net kind of increased in 58%, where in social ministry's perspective, we can see that through MFS, the safety net delivery is also became much more effective. So if we want to find out that how through MFS, we can actually have the safety net package can be delivered successfully, there are three things we can consider. One is if we have a ecosystem in mobile financial services that is, that is one conditions. And if we can have ensure success, which kind of course include literacy, access to mobile phone, and if we have corporate targeting, and in intersection of which you get the successful delivery to the last mile. Now, looking at the process, how it happens right now to reach from government to people. Now, government actually go to local government representative for list of proper targeting. Local representative then reach out to UDC entrepreneurs to digitize the names of this part, the list of names and update the list. And from UDC entrepreneurs, once the list is get updated, that goes back to the government. And from government, it actually goes to the MFS entities. As we know, the major 4 entities are bKash, Nogod, Rocket, SureCash. And from there, it goes to the agent network, and then UDC, in agent network, it reach out to the people. So this is a simple, it's kind of process, as we kind of mentioned. Of course, there are a lot more nodes in this process as well, which we are not discussing, because for our research, before we discuss our research, if we can revisit the conditions that we just mentioned, that how if we divide the whole thing into supply side and demand side. In supply side, of course, government, local government, UDC, agent network, and MFS entities, they are based in the supply side of this whole process. Now, particularly government and local government, we can consider as where the targeting happens. So our research in particular, we are only looking at agent network and UDC entrepreneurs and their interactions with people. So that is, we can consider as the in scope of the research. And what we are not looking at is the interaction that happens with government, local government, and MFS entities. So that is our out scope of the research. So we are going to looking at these interactions. Now, the way we gather data in terms of methodology, we had quantitative data, which we surveyed 3,163 respondents. And from that, 56.72% is coming from 10,000 below, the income household. And rest of it is coming from randomly samples, our sample size of 6,500, which we have done in our digital literacy survey. In terms of qualitative research, we interviewed 10 UDC MFS agent and 10 UDC entrepreneurs. We conducted in-depth interviews using mobile phone, and they're coming from the same locations where the respondents are coming from. And now, in terms of demand, which the demand side experience, we're going to look into these 5 aspects. We're going to look into the household access to MFS account, challenges beyond access. We're going to look into household transactions behavior. We're going to look at receiving financial support from government during COVID, and some perceptions of beneficiaries and non-account owners. So to begin with, we wanted to know a bit about who are the people who actually use MFS in household. When we look at the household level, we have seen that how the 70% of household have access, or at least one member of the household got access to MFS account. And 30% they don't. Now the 70% has some significance, because if you look at the national data, we have seen that from individual account, 58% already got an MFS account in Bangladesh. But reaching out in household level, we can see that it's a 70%, which means that in COVID context or any such situation, which actually kind of tell us that now through MFS, the household level has been reached to that more than the individual level. And if we look at the in terms of the percentage of male and female ratio, we can see that 30% of the owners are female and 70% are male. But when we compare the household, we have seen that 16% of this are female-headed household and 84% overall sample coming from male-headed household. So we wanted to go, a bit more understanding on income-wise, and that's where we have seen that where the income is less than 5,000, the access to MFS account is 57%. 5,000 to 10,000 is 69, and then 10,000, 15,000, you can see is gradually increasing with income level. So as we know that our poverty line is somewhere household income level, 11,000 is the lower threshold. And if we go below that, which is 10,000, 5 to 10,000, even then we can see that MFS access is about 69%. And when we look at the education as well, that how that kind of influence education in terms of ownership, we have seen that above HSC, which is 80% ownership of MFS, but if we look at the group of, the respondent who in a household head who never been to school, there is a 65% access to MFS account, which kind of tells us that even if with the education, there is no formal education, they still have the mobile phone access to more than 60%. And after education, we also wanted to know about in terms of digital literacy, people who actually more familiar with using technology itself, like two particular aspects we looked into. One was the internet use, and the other one is paying bills through mobile phone. So this is basically tell us about the people who actually are more into this using digital media versus who doesn't have this, use this functions. Now, when we look at the internet users comparing the ownership, internet users versus who doesn't have use the internet, we can see 67% who doesn't use internet still have access to MFS accounts. Similarly, when we look at the paying bills, we have seen that 70% who doesn't pay bill using mobile phone still use MFS accounts. So that is the experience in terms of the people who actually use, internet or are paying bills. But if we look at the data in terms of whether they operate mobile phones, how efficiently they operate mobile phone, we have seen that 40% of these owners, they can operate mobile phone by themselves, but 50% of them, they need help from agents. So that kind of shows that agent dependencies even after having an account, MFS account. And when we try to further break it down to see in terms of the income variations, we can see that till 10 to 15,000 10 to 15,000 of income threshold, the people who actually can operate by themselves is still 39%, but we can see slightly increase from 15,000 onward when obviously when income is increasing, their ability to use it by themselves kind of increases as well. Now, if we think about that, how this MFS entities communicate with beneficiaries, the medium is to communicate is actually SMS. So when we ask these questions about how many of them they can read SMS, 50% of respondents said they don't check SMS regularly. And one of the major reason for this, 61% reason is they cannot read SMS, but 28% mention they check when it's necessary. And 10% of course mentioned that they receive unnecessary SMS and so on. So this is one of the challenges that we thought when it comes to the communication between MFS and the the beneficiaries using or the users of MFS accounts. So, and the next one, we're going to look at, if we look at this, how many people actually, received money during that period. We have seen that at least 53% people receive money, more than 53% people receive money during COVID period, which is April to June. And the distinction is at least 26% receive at least once, then 14% twice, three times 6%, and then 4 plus 11. And these are basically the recipients. So we wanted to see the income distributions of the recipients as well, where we have seen that less than 5,000, which is far below the income poverty line, 51% received money through MFS during April and June. And it kind of increases from 5 to 10,000. In 5 to 10,000, when it's 49%, and it increases further when we go beyond 10,000, 15,000, it's 62, 65%, and it goes 66. So from 15,000 onward, we can see a trend of increasing of receiving money. And when we try to understand the difference between male and female household distinction, we have seen that male-headed household receive 55%, female-headed household receive 61%. There is slight, increase in female-headed household as well. But when it comes to other side, which is when sending money, we have seen that 81% of this household, they haven't sent any money using MFS. And when we see the income, in terms of income distributions, we can see that how less than 5,000 is 14, 10,000 is 12. And then we can see some increases coming up from 10,000, 15,000 onward. So generally, if you look at from lower income group, it kind of says that how they are more of a recipient than send out money for transactions, using MFS accounts. So yes, on the next one, we saw that, sorry, yes. On the next one, we wanted to find out that how they learned about their government payment, paying in COVID context. In this stimulus package, the knowledge about the stimulus package, this financial support, which is 2,500 taka in COVID context, 96% of the participants already, multiple account user, they already were aware of it. And one of the major sources of this, 86% mentioned they get to know from relative and neighbors. And then there are 56% learned it from TV, radio, and as union police also played a role, which is 49%, and local market, as another information hub for this COVID packages. So, and then if we go to the next one, we can see that the people who in this last 3 months, because we're looking at from April and June, we can see that how the 15% people open new account during this period. And when we see that how this kind of distributed household, then we can see that how with less than 5,000, it's about 43.5, 5 to 10, about 31, 10 to 15, 25, and then that's how it's gradually decreasing. So what it means is basically, this is the new account holder. We can see that how they kind of already had an account, 45% already had an account, and only 12% created a new account. So this is the number of new accounts have been opened, the percentage of new accounts opened during this period, where we can see the lower, it's mostly evenly distributed in these different income groups. Now, on the next one, we try to understand that what is the reason behind the new account opening. The 60% of the people respondent, they said they open an account, because they want to receive the financial support from government. And 4% increased, mentioned that they receive money from friends and families. Now, those people who open an account, 34% of them already receive financial support by June, which is to the research, we collected the data. They already received money through the new account. And in the next, then we see that how 29% of the overall sample receive. This is about the overall sample, not the subset of the new accounts. So the 29% overall sample already received financial support from government. And we wanted to know a bit more about what kind of support they received. School and stipend payment was 58%, and rest of the, 42% received the safety allowance and social safety allowances. So, and if you see further about how much amount they received is 100 to 500, about 47%, 500 to 1,000, about 10 to 2,000, about 11%, and 24% received 3,500. Now, this 100 to 500, it can be this is school stipend and also some other allowances. And then there are also the increase we see in 2,000 to 3,500, which can be the government, the support that's been received from the government for the COVID context, and also kind of overlap in other, more the higher incomes as well, like 3,500 to about 99%. So we consider that maybe this is where there are more of overlaps of different government supports they received. So on the next one, we have seen that how did they receive the money, where they received 15% received through cash and 15% received through bank, but 70% of this money they receive from government is actually done through MFS accounts. And that kind of says that how MFS account is actually used as a main media as one of the major media for a government to, disseminate the money. I mean, this government supports that to the people in rural areas. And if we look at that, how did they learn about the, government allowances? 53% mentioned they checked SMS, and which is a huge number. So more than 50% mentioned that the only way they learned about this payment is actually SMS. So if we kind of go, look at the previous information where they said that 28%, check SMS when they have to. But when we see that, because it's the only way to learn about financial support, so it kind of pushed people to use SMS, because that's the only way they can know about when they receive money or not. Similarly, when they mentioned about took support from neighbors, from local shop and agents, this is the only way they can know when they actually allow, them agents to, check their phone and see if they receive the money or not. And similarly, when they're 16% coming from where, asked and heard from neighbors, that is also coming from, obviously, as we know that, as coming from the, learning from people, and then check the only way the confirmation is direct to SMS. Now, we looked into how the people mentioned that they already received the money. So we wanted to check what was the satisfactions, what is the perceptions of the recipients. Now, 72% beneficiary mentioned that it takes only 30 minutes for them to receive money. And there is 50% people mentioned there is a zero travel cost. And then we also wanted to know about how satisfied they are with the service, where 56% mentioned they're mostly satisfied. So this is the data we presented is to do with people who actually have MFS accounts. So we wanted to go and check what happens to non-accounts owners. So people who actually doesn't have any accounts, 9% of them use bank transfer. But if we look at the majority of them, which is 65%, mentioned they take help from MFS agent. Then there are also 25% of respondents say that 25% where they actually use support from neighbors and friend MFS account. So it seems like even if they don't have any MFS account, then they're still dependent on MFS services to receive financial support. Now, in the next one, if we see the, how willing they are to open an account, 62% mentioned they are very willing to open account. And one of the major reasons why they want to open an account, 60% mentioned because they want to reduce the dependencies on MFS accounts. And also 48% mentioned they need it since others have accounts. And the only way they can have an account, how they will going to open an account, is actually 86% mentioned they will go to the shop. So we can see that if we from the beginning that how once they open an account to operate their MFS account, they're still dependent on MFS agent. And then we actually check that how to check SMS. And also we looked into this area where if we take, when people who actually doesn't have any account, they also go to MFS agent to get their cash out. So there is even for non-account user, there is a use for it, for MFS agents. And also, if they want to open an account, 86% mentioned they're going to open account through MFS agents. So if we now look at all this data we kind of presented, we can actually see that there are a few points that we can highlight. One is the gender gap that we have seen in the beneficiaries as well. How there's a 30% and 70% of the female respondent, among the respondents. And we can also see that how there is a dependencies with MFS agents, which kind of tell us the structure of it, the way it operate in rural areas. Now, I'm going to ask Safi to come over and present the part where we're going to see further on the MFS agents and UDC entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Safir, could you try and please finish within max 10 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you, Imran Bhai, and thank you so much, Dr. Zulkarnain, for passing it over to me. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be presenting the findings from the qualitative part of our overall study, which will be supplementing to the quantitative part to fulfill the overall research objective. To capture the experiences of MFS agents and the UDC entrepreneurs, in this section, we will be focusing on understanding their work pattern, interaction, and relationship with people, their challenges and coping mechanisms during COVID-19, and how they facilitated the entire cash transfer program during COVID-19. So first of all, we need to profile our respondents. As we all know, the MFS agents are typically small retailers, such as the owners of local and tiny mobile retail shops in the markets found everywhere of the country, and the customers therefore do not need to move far from making a transaction. The agents we interviewed informed us that they are comfortable to address the services related issues of the customers regarding the existing mobile financial services in the market. While almost all of them do not have a graduate degree except one, they are not much high-tech users. Irregularly, they use smartphone apps. But the most important thing is that all our respondents are male, as it was supposed to be. But this absence of female agents contributes in increasing the gender divide in MFS-related activities, supporting our demand side findings. On the other hand, there are female UDC entrepreneurs, but their importance lies in different points. As you all know, a typical UDC is usually operated by private entrepreneurs who are provided with an office space by the union provision. They have more or less satisfactory level of education and are capable of handling different technical equipment. We find that the entrepreneurs in UPC are useful in various ways in the e-governance ecosystem. They have significant roles in addressing the lack of digital literacy of people. The entrepreneurs come from the local populace and have a unique identity of non-government employees providing government services. The entrepreneurs we interviewed believe that they streamline the government services and try to build faith in the local community. From the interviews, we try to sketch out the regular day-to-day works of the MFS agent that include enrolling new customers, service promotion and service delivery, and their service delivery includes cash in, cash out, send money, payment, and remittance. For these activities, they interact with the customers and build level of trust from them. They use NID cards and pictures of the clients for opening new account. They also explain how to avail different services for the customer and how can customers profit from them. They answer customers' queries about MFS and services and their accounts. Also, they work as a cash to e-cash conversion point. But apart from these regular activities, they do some additional roles, like often customers use agents' accounts for sending money. So the agent supporting the users as a credible and reliable person for the financial transaction, right? So the agents often have good business relations with the clients of any locality and existing small businesses. In most of the cases, they personally know their clients and have a somewhat idea about the companies and the users. Companies also get idea about the user's perception regarding the services from the agents. The agents help them to increase their business by service promotions and visibility. In next slide, we will be talking about is there any change in activity during COVID period? MFS agents we interviewed informed us that they had to keep their shops closed during the lockdown period in March to April, and as few of them informed us that they kept their shops open at a very limited scope. One of the agents informed us that even if this shop was closed, he tried to provide MFS services to his neighbors from his home. Like people from all other professions in Bangladesh, this closure had a toll over their financial situations, and they had no other options to gradually return to their businesses for earning their livelihood and support families. All the respondents informed us that they had returned to their full-on business before Eid festival. We tried to document their roles in the service provision and compared them their frequency during regular time and COVID period in a tabular format. Activities reported to be done by almost all our participants on regular basis have been considered as high frequency in this table, and the activities mentioned by 5 to 8 participants are considered moderate. If any activities got less mentions, we consider them as low frequency activity for the agents. We find that among the services MFS agents usually provide, cash in decreased compared to the regular time, but cash out one remained same with high frequency, which is also coherent with our quantitative finding that people from rural areas have received money more than they have sent through MFS. So as cash in decreased but cash out remained same, one of our hypotheses was that there might be a liquidity crisis of cash during COVID-19 period, with a valid concern that if the MFS agents somehow run out cash on hand, the customers would not be able to withdraw money from their e-wallets. However, majority of our respondents informed us that they did not face this kind of issues. It was basically addressed by two factors. A, they have like balanced crowd in their customers. Like there was a gradual changes from April to June period, but definitely that was lower than the normal time. And B, the MFS companies maintained adequate supply of money to the MFS agents through their distributor network during this period. In next slide, we would be talking about what was the experiences of the UDC entrepreneurs in COVID-19 period. Majority of the UDC entrepreneurs informed us that they had more people in their office during working hours compared to the normal time. They explained that people usually wanted to come to Union Parishad office in the morning time in this period. However, they had to follow social distancing rules and hygiene practice. In addition to their regular works, UDC entrepreneurs had to support the operational procedure of digital cash transfer process during COVID-19. They contributed as data entry operators in creating the national database and preserving that in a national web portal for social safety net purpose. Almost all the respondents say that they had the huge work pressure in the month of Ramadan for 2 weeks, and it was exhausting for them as the first round of the cash was to be delivered before Eid. One of the female entrepreneurs informed that during those period, she used to return home from work just before iftar and work late night after breaking her fasting. The next day, again, she had to start early in the morning. So if we see that how these UDC entrepreneurs and MFS agents jointly collaborated to facilitate this cash transfer program from government to people, we divide the entire activities and the entire process into before receiving cash and after receiving cash. Before receiving cash in the selection process, the UDC entrepreneurs and the MFS agent do not have any role. But when the registration process started, the entrepreneurs helped people who were selected by the UP chairman or members to register for cash transfer program with information and technical support. Sometimes like they matched the NID cards, registered phone numbers of the clients to complete the data entry. If any clients did not have a registered SIM card, the entrepreneurs requested him or her to buy a new SIM card with NID. Then they entered the number in the database. Most of the UDC entrepreneurs in our interviews informed us that there were at least 50 customers on daily basis in the office regarding this service during the cash transfer period. Handling a huge number of clients could have backfired, but fortunately, the server could check the authenticity and duplicity of NIDs and mobile numbers, and it helped the officials to reduce mistakes in data input. If anybody provides the same NID number for the second time, the server would automatically show duplicate, and hence the entrepreneurs could avoid the reputation. After receiving cash, both the UDC entrepreneurs and MFS agents supported people to retrieve their money. Many of the cash receivers approached to them after getting the next message, text message regarding the cash transfer. The detailed instructions were in the text message, and process involved verifying a PIN number. They try to help them with necessary information. People do not usually understand the messages themselves. When they came to UDC, the entrepreneurs tried their best to solve their issues, but if they were out of their capacity, they referred them to nearby MFS agents. So to summarize how they jointly cash transfer, which facilitated the cash transfer process. So we see that they have provided casual assistance to people. and they have worked as an interconnected way. And the cash receivers, for example, often went to the agent shops with various queries related to the process. The agents informed us that they face some questions from people that why they haven't received money, but their numbers are registered. But the agents didn't have answers for this type of questions. They only just have information how to retrieve the money. On the other hand, MFS UDC entrepreneurs didn't provide the cash out service, so they referred them to the MFS agents to um, cash out for cash out purpose. So people cannot usually specify and understand the role of stakeholders related to the entire cash transfer process. As we understand from interviewing our respondents, neither the UDC entrepreneurs nor the MFS agents are involved in the targeting process. But again, none of these stakeholders are trained for this sudden and large-scale financial scheme from the government to people and experience of handling public sentiments. We find that from our interviews that people whose names were taken but did not receive the cash came to UDC entrepreneurs and often asked them questions of which they hardly had any clear answers. This kind of issues had an impact on the social relations of the people. Another point raised by the MFS agents we interviewed were about the market prevalence of certain MFS companies. They also didn't have any idea why different people receive money through different MFS companies, because it was a top-level decision and did not reach to the bottom. So we may conclude here with the point that even these stakeholders often work as separate information gatekeepers for the people to discuss MFS or e-service related issues. In this case, they both lacked adequate information about the overall process to support the people, and there were disconnections between them as it was not necessary during the normal time. They try to solve these issues locally and spontaneously through their social connections, not only for their business purpose, but also they have ties with these people and wanted to contribute for making this noble initiative of the government successful. These 2 points of highest human-technology interaction are extremely important, as money could easily be transferred through digital way, but it is these humans who transfer knowledge, assistance, and empathy to people in need. At this point, I would call upon Dr. Zulkarim to summarize our findings and provide some concluding remarks.
So, I mean, based on what Safid discussed, and of course, I mean, the data we presented earlier, if we go back to the slides that we started with, we're saying that the interaction that we want to check with agent network, UDC, and people, the few of the areas that we actually want to rather have an opinion on, we kind of we can have further discussions on. One is the gender gap that we see not only on the beneficiary level, but also in the agents as well. This is one particular thing that we came up with. The other thing is there is also a much needed simplifications of understanding of the MFS process for the people, because there are often some confusions about where to get the information from and how it works. So this is where we saw there may be something that we can further look into. And other thing is not only accountability, because if you look at from very idealistic perspective that how is important to have their privacy in terms of the PIN number that people got. But then again, we understand that in rural side, it's kind of the service that we provide is very much dependent on agent. So that is a balance that we need to sort of understand that how we can solve this debate if you have it in terms of the privacy and also the services that we give in rural service in mobile financial service through the agents. So I'm actually going to leave these questions and actually ask Imran Bhai to start and you take over again.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got a number of discussants, so just have to be very efficient because we want to finish within time. I'd like to, we have got, as I said, we've got a very rich set of people here as panelists. We have got Anil Chaudhary as a policy advisor, A2I, We have Mizanur Rashid, Chief Commercial Officer, Bikash. Khandakar Shakawat Ali, Emeritus Fellow, Unnoyan Shamunnoy, has done a lot of work in this space. We have Maria May, Senior Program Officer from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Greg Chen, Policy Lead of CGAP, and Mehnaz Rabbani as well. So basically, the way I was thinking of structuring this is to first start off, a bit on, because Anil Bhai has to leave as well very soon, and would love to hear his thoughts. So Anil Bhai, if you could, kind of really talk about the last slide. I think if you focus our attention on the last slide, where what we're really saying is this: is that the two sort of big policy challenge. There are a lot of other divides, but the gender divide in particular, I think, is a key one. And then the whole simplification of process and information flow between UDC and agents and the beneficiaries, and then the accountability that we want to basically enhance with respect to, because they are dealing with lot of confidential and private information. So the accountability aspects here. So over to you, Anil Bhai.
Thank you, Imran Bhai. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Zulkarnain and other presenters. I think it was a wonderful deep dive into what's happening as far as the MFS, usage of MFS for G2B transactions are concerned. So this is very enlightening. So thank you for that. Distinguished moderator and audience. Imran Bhai, thank you for the question. And thank you for allowing me to speak early, because I have to leave for an 11 o'clock meeting. So I'll talk about a few things, but starting with the question that you just mentioned, I think the process simplification and understanding, I think that is key. Accountability is also key. Now, given that a lot of the G2P beneficiaries are illiterate and also low literate, the question of how we use MFS right now with the PIN numbers and all of that, one technological advancement that we could potentially explore is biometric authentication. Right now, we don't use that at the point of cash out. So that's something that we could explore, and we are actually looking at ways of doing it. So this not only gives control to the beneficiary, greater control to the beneficiary, because they don't have to remember things that possibly higher literate people are more comfortable remembering. They just do biometric authentication. So that's one exploration that we could look at. This also has the additional benefit that what happens is, when in the case of a death of a beneficiary and let's say the account is operated right now by a person of the household, the benefits actually continue to flow, even though it should not in the case of a death. So again, using more advanced technology, I think, may allow us to reduce that as well. So any leak out and all of that. So that could also improve accountability on the side of beneficiary and the agents network. So those are things I think we can explore. One other thing would be useful, I think, is linkage with the death registration process. That is also simplifying. That is, I mean, we would look at simplification of that as well. It's a fairly complicated process, and there is not enough incentive to do death registration. So this is the mandate of the Ministry of Local Government, specifically the Office of the Registrar General of Birth and Death. So I think there is some issue that we need to sort out there as well. So I'll mention that. One other thing I would like to point out is because right now most of the money is really cashed out, we are not able to take advantage of additional digital products that may actually come in the future, and that should come in the future. So potentially forced savings, potentially any kind of health insurance that can be added to many of our social safety net benefits for universal health coverage. So these things also need to be designed in the context of the beneficiaries. Right now, the gender gap that you mentioned, because of the absence of female entrepreneurs, female agents, we need to figure out that piece as well. So creation of additional products looking to the lens of the beneficiary would be important. So in that respect, interoperability between different MFS providers and between MFS and banks would be important, I think. Because right now, because we are just doing one-time benefit transfer and the money is really cashed out in most of the cases, MFS interoperability is not very, very high on the agenda for G2P. But as soon as we start looking at interesting financial products that would benefit the beneficiaries, that further benefit the beneficiaries, would have to look at MFS interoperability and MFS to bank interoperability. Right now, as you know, any kind of interoperability is bilateral. So if there is a MFS to bank interoperability, it has to be one MFS provider, another bank sitting together and saying that, okay, let's work out some kind of a bilateral integration. But what we need is some kind of an interoperability switch. And there is an initiative from the ICT division, as you all know, called IDTP, that is exploring this wide interoperability between MFS providers and between MFS and banks. So when that happens, the prototype is already developed. We had a meeting last week with the governor and the ICT minister to start doing actual pilot implementation of this. Hopefully that will happen in the next 3 months or so. So we'll see some greater interoperability within the MFS and banking world. The last thing that I would like to point out is targeting. There were a couple of slides that focused on targeting, especially in the context of COVID. We had to bring in about 5 million households who were not in any kind of poverty database, any kind of social safety net databases. So what we needed to do was, again, fall back to the traditional ways of targeting. One thing that we're exploring with Professor Mushfiq Mubarak at Yale University is whether we can use digital footprints for targeting. So a lot of the new core, these 5 million households, had digital footprints. I mean, they used to be able to transact using any of the MFS. They had some kind of financial transaction footprints. But unfortunately, because we did not have the mechanism or the ecosystem to get the data from telcos or MFS providers to figure out how to do targeting, we were not able to utilize that information. But we are exploring the possibility of using that kind of advanced technology mechanism where there is digital footprint of financial transactions to figure out poverty levels. So one of the theories, and this has been applied in a couple of countries, I think Afghanistan and maybe in African countries, where the change of behavior in financial transactions gives us a relative poverty score. So how any kind of dip in financial transactions would give us an insight into the level of income loss or financial loss that has actually happened within the household. So there are advanced mechanisms that we can actually explore. So we will look at that in future. So those are some of the things I wanted to point out right now as far as what I just heard from the presentation. Thank you, Imran bhai.
Thank you so much, Anil bhai. I think those are very excellent points, especially around this whole leakage. This is something that we don't often think about. There is obviously many of these G2P payments are annuities, and when people die, they're supposed to stop, and so that there's this big leakage sort of challenge as well. On the targeting front, I mean, it's very, very promising what you basically said, and I'm aware of this, of course, this work that Mushfiq is doing. But just to point out in our survey, we should not read too much on the income side with respect to targeting, simply because the income that we have here is a baseline income. This is not the income post-COVID. And we know from a livelihood survey, the massive decline in income that has happened with respect to the vulnerable, non-poor, even non-poor, moving into poverty. So, a lot of these, so trends that we see, we should not read automatically that this means mistargeting. These are pre-COVID income.
Sure.
Just a point. Yeah. Great. So right now, I think Anirban has sort of kicked off a few thoughts there. We have Maria and Greg primarily. I mean, Maria is obviously kind of has got a lot of experience, and I think is sort of focusing on the Bangladesh portfolio as well. So I'd like to start off perhaps with Maria. For your sort of reflections, on any of these three challenges that we are trying to outline here. And I think targeting is another new one. I think there are four kind of challenges right now we're really talking about, right? So one is the gender gap. There's a targeting issue. There's a process simplification challenge, and then there's accountability challenge. So you want to pick up any of those from your perspective and any global lessons that you want to draw on. Thanks, Maria.
Great, thanks a lot, Imran Pai. You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Well, first of all, just want to echo what Anir Pai said, that the research presented here is incredible and gives us a really great starting point for a conversation grounded very much in what's happening at the beneficiary level. I think I have maybe four takeaways that I'd like to share here. So the first one is just, I think that the research really is a testament to what an economic lifeline mobile money has been for many households in Bangladesh during the COVID period. And I think it reflects a lot of decisions over the years of the mobile financial service providers to be very committed to making this work for low-income households. So decisions to make this work for a feature phone, to make the technology requirements as low as possible, to really focus on building out that agent network. I'm sure there's been a lot of moments where, there's been decisions, and as we look globally, we do see that in a lot of countries, these services are really focused on smartphone owning households that have internet access, that have higher literacy levels. And so it's really encouraging, I think, for the global learning to see in Bangladesh that this has really been taken up by so many households, particularly in this moment of crisis. I think what that means, though, is that you have this trade-off now between trying to simplify and trying to make things work, but wanting this to really be accessible to everyone based on the technology that they have access to. And I don't have an answer to that, but I think there's a balance there and a bit of a tension that's maybe worth acknowledging and talking about more. Globally, again, we've been watching what's happening with cash transfers, and we've seen across the world over 1 billion people come into cash transfer programs because of COVID and as governments extend these safety nets. We've also seen a tendency towards digitization. What we haven't seen in many countries is that they've been able to do this without major liquidity challenges. And so it was interesting to see that overall, it seemed that people had a very easy time accessing agents, even when shops were closed, even with the challenges we know existed, that the distributors were able to keep liquidity more or less at the need level that people had. I mean, these are really amazing successes, and I'm sure that the agents, the financial service providers, the regulators behind them, that this was a coordinated effort. On the gender side, just a few quick comments. I mean, as you all know, Bangladesh has pretty major digital divides. You could look at financial inclusion, where there's a 30-point gender gap. You could look at mobile phone ownership. You could look at labor force participation. I mean, this is a multifaceted problem. And in general, we see that government cash transfers can be a really kind of transformative tool to both address financial inclusion as well as potentially influence household bargaining, inter-household dynamics. And so I think this is an area where I'm glad the research picked up on this, but I think there could be more done there. I noted that I think only about 28% of beneficiaries based on the survey were female. I haven't seen those numbers nationally released, but I'd be curious to see. Outside of these emergency periods, we usually see that the majority of beneficiaries are women, and Bangladesh is no exception to that. We've also seen during COVID in Bangladesh and many other countries globally that interpersonal violence has increased. And so just thinking about how we can use this cash distribution to support women in the best way possible. And I think it was interesting to see, again, at the household level, the access is there, probably more in-depth research to be done to understand how we can bring women into that more comprehensively and more meaningfully in their lives. And part of that obviously would be thinking about their preferences in agents in terms of the trade-offs between convenience, proximity, gender of the agent, and those sorts of things. Just maybe my last thought is that as we think about what all this means for cash transfers in Bangladesh going forward, I mean, I think it's quite clear that the agent is critical. And, the agent historically seems to have been a trusted source of support, an effective form of support that's enabled people who don't have the comfort level or the ability to use their wallet themselves in a successful way. I think the UDC will be a critical additional source of support. I'm curious maybe for us to brainstorm some others, especially for women. Who are their trusted forms of support that they could access? A few comments came up about grievance redressal, and I think this would be an area to explore a bit more fully. Again, as we have these lower literacy and lower income groups coming into financial services for the first time, thinking about the consumer protection and the fraud areas are important. And all of that, just to add, I think there are resources involved. And so thinking about, what support do the agents need to be able to do this well? What support do the financial service providers need? What are the incentives kind of at each level? And then on top of that, the monitoring and the regulation that sits on top of that. So thanks for inviting me to participate in this and looking forward to the rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Maria. I think, your this whole focus on what can be, thinking much more deeply and taking this whole gender divide point further around, not only sort of stopping that as a problem, but, how do we use the G2P payments, many of whom are actually targeted, kind of women targeted, but within the household. How can we use these as entry points to sort of create more transformative impacts? And I particularly think that your point about thinking about alternative platforms beyond the agent network and UDC, and these are male-dominated spaces. I know that we are trying to, there's a research that's going on. I think IPA, along with a few other researchers, are looking at, along with Brac, looking at, what happens if we have more women agents. But I think that's more of a long-drawn thing. Perhaps there's some intermediary work to be done, again, through the sort of using some of the women's own solidarity group networks, friendship networks and peer networks as the intermediation points. And here, particularly, I think the intergenerational partnership can actually be possible because, we have a lot more women who are educated now than they have ever been in the history of Bangladesh. So there could be a whole different set of services that actually could emerge that is worth thinking about, very much like the old days of poultry sector development of Brac in Bangladesh, where you had to create all forms of intermediation to be able to actually make that service really penetrate sort of deep. So I think those are very, very interesting and important thoughts, some of which hopefully we'll take forward through our We Define competitive research initiative. Some of these are actually there in the white paper that has just been sort of published. Great. At this point, I'd now like to invite Greg. Greg, sorry, I know this is ungodly hour for you, but thank you so much. So Greg, over to you.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't miss it, and I'm very happy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to participate, and I stay up because it's really interesting research, and I'm glad to be able to stay up with it. So first of all, maybe I'm going to not comment too much on the research itself, but just maybe a reaction, which is, it really I'm really glad to see BIGD get into this because it's really providing a lot of color into what is emerging as a really important area for Bangladesh. And to bear in mind how far Bangladesh has come, I mean, I think MFS was launched in 2011. It's hardly 9 years ago, and yet it's such an important part of the response to COVID in a relatively short amount of time. And also, I think as the research indicates, Bangladesh is fortunate to have a rich, diverse array of players who are contributing, from the UDCs to the MFS providers to the the agent banking, which is also covered under this, and then we've got no good, which is in fact treated a bit differently. And I think that richness really is a strength in Bangladesh, in that there's a whole range of different approaches, and some of the color and differences I think start to come out, and I think the researchers did a good job trying to go at some of those different ways that MFS and G2P and social payments are being delivered. So that's just a broader comment. I was going to focus some of my other comments just on maybe thinking ahead, and maybe this is being optimistic and hoping that BIGD remains involved in looking at MFS and social payment and G2P delivery. And here, I think there were some more slides shared in the original deck that Manal sent to me. And some of them were getting at this question of the broader ecosystem in which these payments arrive. And I realized that, very importantly, the research focuses on the interaction between the agent and the recipient, and that's where the research belongs. But it does occur within a broader ecosystem. And that ecosystem, I think some of the researchers were starting to get at. I think the analysis on that could be strengthened, but let me comment and say that ecosystem is shaped by regulation. So you've got no good, you've got the agent banking, and you've got MFS. Then it's shaped by the private players and their agent networks, and their agent networks are quite different. And the third maybe piece of that is really multiple use cases. And the use cases include G2P, but they also include the person-to-person payments, and they also include some of the business payments or utility payments as well. And so that ecosystem is a complex set of interconnected forces that shape what's possible across Bangladesh. Now I see on the shared screen we've put up one version of the ecosystem, and I think that's a helpful rendering. There's a lot of different interconnected players in this, and that brings me to maybe a wider point, and I think Anir was getting at some of this. Maria was getting at some of this. There are some things on interoperability, biometrics, other questions. I think someone referred to empowerment of the end consumer. If you change those, how would the ecosystem improve, and what would be the outcomes for agents and customers over time? And I think that's a useful way to, in the future, think about how the research might work to improve the ecosystem. And that then brings me back maybe to just a sort of a framing for BIGD as you move down the road on the next stage of this. I liked your focus. You said, Imran, earlier on, is targeting working? Is the payment delivery working? How are we addressing the gender gap? And what levels of accountability are there for G2P? Those sound like, to me, the right sort of 4 metrics for assessing and holding G2P and digital services accountable. And then the role of BIGD, I hope over time, it would be able to continue this kind of research, tracking progress, focusing on the customer service. But I think over time, evolving your understanding of that broader ecosystem, because as you think about improving things, some of what you learn from the customer agent interface may be fixed upstream by something that has got to do with interoperability or biometric things, some things that can't be provided by the agent and customer alone, or just that interface, but has actually got to do with the broader ecosystem. And so I think if you're able to evolve this research over time, linking it back to some of those ecosystem questions to close the gender gap, to improve customer service, to get at some of the key things that you've already targeted, I think this is a really promising thing to continue over time. So I'm gonna stop my comments there. I guess it's a hope that I liked it a lot, and my main plea is to continue it and to continue to evolve the research.
Great, thanks so much. And yeah, I think this whole point about focusing on the ecosystem for some of the challenges that we talked about, whilst I think we focus on kind of really getting a more grounded understanding of these customer agent interface issues, but then we need to remember that many of the solutions remain upstream, and we need to engage with that upstream actors as well, and also contribute to that. So either we do that through partnership, or we sort of do some work ourselves in that space. And at this stage, I think on the ecosystem, let's be great to now bring in Mizanur Rashid, Chief Commercial Officer, bKash. So Mizan, if you could sort of shed some light as more from an ecosystem perspective onto the the findings or the sort of research, kind of the insight that we are trying to, or we obtained from the research itself. That would be fantastic. And then I'll end up with Shaukat Bhai towards the end to really reflect on the regulatory issues and the political economy aspects of this whole ecosystem, because he has done a lot of work on that. So just queuing up things. Mizan Bhai, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Imran Bhai and Zulkarnain Safir, for your study. I think, as Greg was saying, right, it's a fantastic starting point. And just taking cue from where he left, in terms of ecology, when you look at the mobile MFS ecology, it's while this UDC and the agent interaction is actually a pretty strong part of it, but there is a whole host of other ecology which is outside of it. So the ecology is, once a person gets money into his or her wallet, what does she do with that? Does she cash out, or pay bills, or buy things, buy vegetable, or send money to a relative, and so on and so forth? So it could be host of other things that she can do by using cash, but instead of using cash, what she is doing. So, and that is one part, I think, which has evolved, which has been evolving over the past few years, but has the COVID has given a real big boost to the entire process. So even in your study, what I saw is 89% of the customers who has a MFS account actually uses this for some sort of bill payment. Now, this was not the case, I think, about a year back. Now, how did it happen? Because by now, at least from bKash side, I can speak about, we have connected all the electricity billers. We have connected all the telephone billers, all the mobile network operator has always been part. So the ecology is gradually becoming bigger and bolder and stronger. And therefore, when a person gets some fund, whether through salary or through G2P or whatever, so how she can actually find ways to, rather than just cashing it out, making it or utilize in the digital space, and therefore making it more productive for her, and making it more productive for the recipients who are receiving it at lightning speed. Just making a little bit, Imran, I know that you told me to focus on the ecology or the ecosystem primarily, but I think part of the ecology is also how you get the new customers on board seamlessly, painlessly, and fast. And on that, the country has made a tremendous progress. Most of the operator, and I can talk about bKash, now has the digital onboarding. So a customer can get onboarded in 5 minutes time, which is the NID verified with the Election Commission database, and therefore it's really authentic and just one account against one ID card, and therefore you can really feel that much confident before the government can disburse that G2P payment, that this person, first of all, is actually alive and also an authentic person, and therefore and there are no multiple accounts against that particular person. But here, I think even the study depicts that SMS usage remains a very big constraint, and that's one area from operator, MFS operator, from government, from the bodies like UDC and everybody at the NGOs alike. We need to bring those customers on board in terms of bringing their literacy level up. Not so much perhaps the classic literacy, but SMS literacy, how to read those Banglish or Bengali SMSs, so that the operators like bKash or the government of Bangladesh can actually start connecting with the very important information that they want to connect. In the area of targeting today, the targeting, what Arup bhai was saying, Anir bhai was saying, that it's actually a challenge. And this time during the G2P payment, we found that equally tough. bKash received about 1.9 million beneficiary names, but then a lot of those names and the phone numbers were actually didn't exist at all. I don't know what the name, but the phone number didn't exist at all, let alone creating an account against those. When we checked against the EC database, those particular NID number didn't exist, or the person did not exist. So creating that database in terms of targeting, if you could deploy, as Anil bhai was saying, some sort of technology, because 85% of the beneficiary who received the payment, they actually had some sort of account. So if we could deploy some sort of algorithm to find out who these persons are digitally, because they have the digital footprint, I think that's going to be a very big stride in terms of targeting the right sort of people, and making the entire process much more efficient. And the grievance that I think Safir was talking about will go down. One of the reasons for the grievance is a lot of people registered with inaccurate information from the UDCs or from the ground level, which got filtered out first in the finance ministry and then with the operators like bKash. And the people who were not disbursed the money from Bangladesh Bank, they were not informed that they were not getting that money. So the loop was never completed. So the moment we make the targeting more robust, more efficient, the grievance also will go down tremendously. But from targeting today, from targeting to access to disbursement is actually completely automated. Then we make it automated. And the moment we make the entire thing digital, the amount of the efficiency we bring about, it's mind-boggling. Just one example I want to give. In the erstwhile process of G2P disbursement, a fund would go to a designated bank and sit for months before the fund could be disbursed to the actual beneficiary. But today, with the digital MFS disbursement, the fund comes to from EFT, electronic fund transfer from Bangladesh Bank. It comes in the evening, and tomorrow it's available with the beneficiary account. That's the kind of efficiency we can achieve, the efficiency of the funds. And the similar efficiency we can get if we can get from targeting to ensuring digital access to disbursement and subsequently utilization in the digital ecosystem, or the productivity of the same amount of money we can bring about, that would be a mind-boggling. Just one comment on MFS agent, how do we get gender diversity on that? I think we need to work on the root level of that. You see, in my entire life, I worked for trade side. I used to work for Unilever. Now, I've seen our trade industry is male dominated. It's not so much economic, it's socio-cultural. Now, our NGOs have done a tremendous effort in terms of empowering women in the rural areas, but that has not resulted in women participating in a bigger way in terms of the trading. Now, that's something we need to work at the root, rather than just trying to get more female agents. which we are doing from BIGD side, by the way. But I think alone, it's going to yield suboptimal result rather than the optimal result. So we all need to put our might together to bring about the social cultural change in the country. So a lot of subjects, but I thought these are some of the thoughts that I need to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mizan Bhai. Those were like some very thought-provoking points. In particular, this whole efficiency gain that you talked about in terms of the productivity of the fund is absolutely, kind of the example you gave is quite mind-boggling. But perhaps it would be also kind of, I think, useful to think about efficiency gain from the beneficiary side as well. So one of the things that we currently have is bulk payment, like every 3 months, the beneficiaries basically get their payment. Now it's an open question in terms of whether making that more flexible, creating greater frequency of that payment, what type of effect it would basically have. That one could basically argue that maybe more frequent disbursements or ability to withdraw money more frequently can give them more confidence to actually keep some money, which is exactly where we want to basically get to. So, so that is the other kind of aspect of efficiency that perhaps, we can, I think we need to also talk about. But
one point, just 1 minute, I want to make. You see, this time in the GTP process, what has happened, the Ministry of Finance had allocated different geographies to the different MFS operator. I think that was, for that moment in time, that was the right thing to do, rather than wasting time, because people needed money, nick of that moment. But once implementing, what he figured out, not necessarily the geography awarded to different MFS was the biggest strength geography for each one of those operators. And therefore, ultimately, what I mean by that, not every operator has got the equal level of agent network across the country. So operator X got a geography in Chattogram, which whereas they have the strongest network in Dinajpur. So there was a mismatch between the operator's strength and the geography awarded, and therefore ultimately the customers became losers. So one of the suggestions from our side was, if we could give the option to the customers that they choose, because they know the best who's the strongest operator in their geography, and therefore if they could get to choose which is the operator they want to get the disbursement through, we actually make the entire process even more efficient and customer centric.
Right.
Let the customer choose, and in today's world, that's not a big task that we are asking, because they can opt digitally just in a flick of a second or a flick of a few clicks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. I think that's a very good point to now move to Shakhawat Bhai, because I think Shakhawat Bhai, you have been doing quite a bit of work, both kind of micro level, but also looking at the regulatory structures, looking at the competition policy as well, and the political economy aspect, because I think that is also very, very important. So Shakhawat Bhai, over to you.
Thank you, Imran. So I try to bring 3 points, very focused, about the research, cash transfer and MFS, and policy issues, particularly accountability, and in that context, regulatory issues. So I congratulate Dr. Jahangir and his team. It is a good start. So they produce very powerful data and very interesting data, which is important for the researcher and the policymaker. But the weakness of the whole research, particularly engagement with the policy and regulatory aspect. So I try to bring that issues. Particularly interface different kind of data. And I am following, Imran, your all programs, and you are using today also a very important vocabulary, particularly digitizing social science. So as a sociologist, I appreciate your attitudes for the new research arena, but we need to prepare ourselves also to handle new situation. So field data is important, but new types of data also be contribute in future for social protection issues. One, macro data, particularly they also be used Bangladesh bank data, and big data also produced by the different MFS operator. And Greg Chain particularly brings some issues on inclusive financing. You see, we are now third generation inclusive financing. You very know microfinance. When I work in Grameen Trust, you work for us. Then MFS, second generation microfinance, inclusive financing, and third generation, particularly agent banking. So all of them, they're producing data. So, and electronic data. So particularly engaging that data is very much important for future policy making. Second point is cash transfer and MFS. You see, COVID time and non-COVID time. A very important data I saw, particularly different G2P payment, particularly education stipend is 58%. That is more important, you see. It is in primary and secondary. In that context, I try to bring accountability issues and policy issues. So democratization and empowerment of the beneficiary, I saw it is very important in context of accountability. Because you see, freedom of choice, Mizan bring that issues, but I have some flaw within him. Because already government have a policy. Every individual who are beneficiary in social safety net, they can choose their MFS operator. So policy is there, but implementation is not happening. So it is very much political issues, you know. So I try to bring a very particular case in that aspect. I work also education program, and I have experience to evaluate a primary education stipend program. So you see, MFS contribute here. Sure Cash, now Sure Cash give that service for primary education stipend program. But it is very hand-picked model. You see, our procurement policy, government procurement policy is not followed. And same thing, PPR also, same thing are happening for the future also. New project is coming, and from 2021, new operator also be selected by the primary Ministry of Primary and Mass Education. And that also be very hand-picked model. So in that context, accountability issues is very much important. So beneficiary have no choice. So Mizan bring a very important issues. Particularly agent point is very much important. So very near to his house, it is good for them. But if you choose some MFS operator, their agent point is not all over the country. So beneficiary loser. And another important issues, policy versus manipulation is still now. Within the MFS operator, they are trying to be manipulated. And government officials, bureaucracy is there. And Bangladesh Bank and Ministry of Finance is very much work for the beneficiary, but we can complement it. We can implement that issues. In that context, I try to bring important issues, that is social safety net is a public goods, So we need to create a voice from the civil society that is totally absent, because poor people have no voice. And researcher, particularly, and there is a very weak point, particularly in field level experience. You are collecting the data, but you know how the processes work, the role of different stakeholders. So to address social safety net, we need to be engaged with policy audience, particularly Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Planning, uh, uh, Bangladesh Bank itself, and the regulatory issues also. So very specific way I try to propose, Imran, BIGD, you can think about it, a state of inclusive financing annual report that maybe contribute for the sector to develop. আমি এক্ষেত্রে একদম সুনির্দিষ্টভাবে কিছু কথা বলতে চাই, সেটা বাংলায় বলছি, আমাদের বিদেশি বন্ধুদের ইমরান আপনি অনুবাদ করে দেবেন। এখানে 5 ধরনের এমএফএস রেগুলেশনের আন্ডারে 5 ধরনের রেগুলেটরি কাজ হচ্ছে। একটা হচ্ছে 100% bank-led model. So Rocket is 100% bank-led model. Bikash is a subsidiary model. There is 51% is one of the bottleneck, particularly for the foreign investment. Then another model is technical partnerships. So Sure Cash is a technical partnerships with different banks. And new identity, new service is coming, Nogod with public identity with private sector. But you see, there is some gaps. Who are their regulator? So Bangladesh Bank should be the regulator all the MFS industry. And another issue is coming with a particular bank with MNO, mobile operators also they are coming with MNO. So after 2019, so that regulations, there is no scope MNO in MFS industry because it is beneficiary ownership agenda. So that kind of very important political issues need to be settled down. So last 7 years, I am working on it, you know. I write in Bangla because language is also very much important. I have a very big critic about your study because instrument should be in Bangla because, you know, the ecosystem, you are talking about the ecosystem. Those who are working, they are more familiar with your local language. But English vocabulary, sometimes it is misguided and mismatched for making the understanding. So field research should be in Bangla, and that kind of conversation also be in sometimes Bangla because otherwise core stakeholder is missing, you know, core stakeholder is missing. So that is my humble points try to bring for you, and I'm happy to contribute. It is a very good panel. I know Greg Chain. Greg is our friend. So when introducing MFS, Syed Hashmi, Greg Chain, and SIGAV head, we meet with Atir Rahman. So I work with Atir Rahman now and independently also. So there is a interesting work done by BIDS. I am part of the team. That report, maybe you get interest, Imran and other colleagues. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shafawat Bhai. I mean, extremely valuable points. This whole idea of trying to consolidate and perhaps have a state of inclusive finance type of annual report that looks at this, or some kind of periodic report, I think is a promising idea. And it's something that I would love to discuss.
And I just request it may be a platform because it is a new types of knowledge emerging. So different people in different place. So individuals and organizations get together, and it is very much important because poor people is very much concerned on that aspect. They are benefited, and it is a payment system. It is rather than a total ban.
Right.
So unbanked people, to address the unbanked people, it is a very good instrument, and we make a very commanding success in that field. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakwat Bhai. And your other points about the language and all that is that extremely critical. And I think we need to have multiple forums. I mean, this is more of a global forum, but others we should definitely, not forget that we need to keep the conversation alive. We need to really be serious about this as a language issue. I think we are 9 minutes, late to sort of completing, the 11:30, but we started a bit late. So Mehnaz, would you just like to take 2-3 minutes if you have any reflection?
Yes, thank you, Imran Bhai, and thank you to all the distinguished panelists. আমি বাংলায় বলি শাখাওয়াত ভাইয়ের সাজেশনে আসলে বিআইজিডিতে আমাদের উদ্দেশ্য এটা যে আমরা এখন এই সোশ্যাল সায়েন্স অফ ডিজিটাইজেশনের আন্ডারে আমরা এখন আসলে অনেক ডিফারেন্ট অ্যাসপেক্টস আছে, এগুলা একটা একটা করে বোঝার চেষ্টা করছি। এখন আসলে রিয়েল রিসার্চ আমার মতে শুরু হয়নি, আমরা formative research stage achi. This will lead us to formulate the real research questions on how to get on a pathway to equitable scale up of digitization. আমি quickly এই রিসার্চের একটা পয়েন্ট আমার ইন্টারেস্টিং লেগেছে, সেটা একটু বলতে চাই। সেটা হলো যে আমরা দেখছি যে এই জনগোষ্ঠী যাদের আমরা সার্ভে করেছি তারা মেইনলি এমএফএস ইউজ করছে টাকা পাওয়ার জন্য, বিভিন্ন ধরনের গ্রান্ট পাওয়ার জন্য। তারা কিন্তু টাকা দিচ্ছে না, এমএফএস ইউজ করে টাকা পাঠাচ্ছে না। কিন্তু এটা যেটা বোঝা যায় সেটা হলো যে আমাদের রেগুলার ট্রানজাকশনের জন্য কিন্তু এমএফএস ইউজ করা হচ্ছে না, এটা শুধু একটা টাকা পাওয়ার একটা উপায়। তো আনির ভাই যেসব কথা বললেন যে আমাদের নেক্সট লেভেল অফ ম্যাচুরিটি এমএফএস এর আসবে যখন আমরা এই মোবাইল টেকনোলজি দিয়ে আরো অনেক ধরনের ফাইন্যান্সিয়াল প্রোডাক্ট দিতে পারবো, অথবা আমরা মোবাইল ডেটা দিয়ে টার্গেটিং করতে পারবো। ওটা কিন্তু হবে অনলি ওয়েন একটা লেভেল অফ ক্রিটিক্যাল মাস এই এমএফএস এর থ্রু দিয়ে শুধু টাকা পাওয়ার জন্য ইউজ করে না, অনেক ধরনের ট্রানজাকশনের জন্য ইউজ করে। তখন কিন্তু এই জিনিসটা ওই লেভেল অফ ম্যাচুরিটিতে আসবে। দেয়ার ইজ গোইং টু বি আ টিপিং পয়েন্ট যখন ওই স্টেজে আমরা এসব করতে পারবো, মোর ম্যাচিউর প্রোডাক্টস ইউজ দিতে পারবো বা টার্গেটিং এর জন্য ডেটা এনাফ জেনারেট হবে। সো ওইটা করতে আমি চিন্তা করছিলাম যে এটা ইজ ইট অ্যান অটোমেটিক প্রসেস নাকি এটার জন্য কোনো ইন্টারভেনশন বা নাজিং প্রয়োজন আছে। সো দিস ইজ জাস্ট আ থট ফর মি অ্যাজ আ রিসার্চার। আমরা হোপফুলি এসব ইস্যু নিয়ে আরো পরে চিন্তা করব। আর শাখাওয়াত ভাই, আমাদের ফিল্ড রিসার্চ অবশ্যই বাংলায় ছিল, আমার মনে হয় আপনার সাথে আমরা ইংরেজি ভার্সন এটা শেয়ার করেছি, বাট আমাদের এই প্রত্যেকটা সাজেশন আসলে খুবই ইম্পর্টেন্ট, আর আমরা এইগুলো সবকটাই চেষ্টা করবো ফলো আপ করতে, and we definitely in for the long haul, as Greg said, to do more research on this area.
Great, thank you.
একটা ডেটা শেয়ার করতে চাই মেবি মেরিনের কথার পরিপ্রেক্ষিতে। সেটা হচ্ছে যে এমএফএস টোটালি একটা পেমেন্ট সিস্টেম এবং শুধু গরিবদের জন্যই এটা প্ল্যান করা হয়েছে। সো আমাদের কোভিড পূর্ব সময়ে যেই চেহারাটা ছিল সেটি হচ্ছে গ্রোথ সেন্টার থেকে, ইকোনমিক গ্রোথ সেন্টার থেকে গ্রামে পয়সা যেত। এবং আমরা বিআইডিএস এ যে কাজটি শেষ করেছি এটা 18তে সার্ভেটা করা এবং পুরো কান্ট্রি ফোকাস সেটা। সেখানে দেখা যেত যেটা যে সকালে একটা রিক্সা পুলার ঢাকাতে কাজ করছে, 10টার ভেতরে তার গ্রামের বাড়িতে টাকা চলে গেছে এবং সকালে তার বাজারটা হচ্ছে, যেটি হয়তো 1 দশক আগে এটি সম্ভব ছিল না। সো এটা হেলথে, এটা এডুকেশনে, এটা নিউট্রিশন লেভেলে অনেক ধরনের কিন্তু সুযোগ রেখেছে। এবং আমরা একটা ডেটা দিতে পারি, সেটা হচ্ছে 68% কনজাম্পশনে কিন্তু ব্যবহার হচ্ছে এই টাকাটা, এই যে শহর থেকে গ্রামে টাকাটা যাচ্ছে, এবং তারপরে সেটা হেলথে ব্যবহার হচ্ছে, তারপরে এডুকেশনে ব্যবহার হচ্ছে। কিন্তু কোভিড টাইমে যেটি জিলুর ভাই, পিপিআরসি এবং উন্নয়ন বিআইজিডি আপনারা যে প্রথম রিসার্চ ইমরান আপনারা করেছিলেন, জিলু ভাই asked me যে শাখা তোমরা তো কাজটা করলে, তোমার স্ট্রাইকিং বিষয়টি কি? যেটি খুব দেখার বিষয়, এই রিসার্চ গুলোর ভীষণ পলিসি অ্যাসপেক্ট থেকে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আমি সেজন্য এই কথাগুলো বলছি। কারণ হচ্ছে সেখানে আমি জিলু ভাইকে বলেছিলাম, জিলু ভাই এই ডেটাটা আমার কাছে খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট মনে হচ্ছে, এটাকে ধরে আপনারা ডিজাইনটা করবার চেষ্টা করতে পারেন। অ্যান্ড ইউ নো হোসেন জিল্লুর পভার্টি অ্যাসপেক্ট ফ্রন্টিয়ারে, অ্যান্ড আপনাদের যে ডাটাটা যেটা দেখলাম ইমরান, একেবারেই কাছাকাছি। আমি কিন্তু সমস্ত ওয়েবিনার গুলো এবং প্রেজেন্টেশন গুলো দেখছি, এবং আমার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে কোভিড কালীন সময়ে পার্টিকুলারলি বায়ো লিডারশিপ ডাটা প্রডিউস করা গেছে, কিন্তু যেটি বড় ধরনের একটা সংকট, এগুলোকে পলিসি লেভেলে জায়গায় জায়গায় ইনপুট করতে পারা। আমি কোনো সমালোচনা অ্যাসপেক্ট থেকে বলছি না, একেবারে ফ্রম দ্য হার্ট আর্টস থেকে। আমিও তো বিআইজিডিতে ছিলাম, তখন কিন্তু এই লেভেলে কাজগুলো হয়নি, একাডেমিক রিসার্চ গুলো হয়েছে। এবং মাইক্রো ফাইন্যান্সের উপরে কিন্তু স্টেট অফ মাইক্রো ফাইন্যান্স একটা হাসমি শুরু করেছিল, যেটা কন্টিনিউ হয়নি। আমরা ক্যাম্পি থেকে দেখছি স্টেট অফ এডুকেশন একটা করা হয়, কিন্তু পলিসি এঙ্গেজমেন্টে সেই জায়গায় যাওয়ার সুযোগ কম। কিন্তু ফিনান্সিয়াল সেক্টরে ইজ ভেরি মাচ ইম্পর্টেন্ট। এবং এই জায়গায় আমি বলছি, আমি ডক্টর জাহাঙ্গীরকেও এই কথা বলেছি, ও আমার সঙ্গে যোগাযোগ করেছিল, যে এখন ইকোনমি পিক করছে, এর কারণে যে আপনারা যে বলছেন নিউ পুয়ার যেটা তৈরি হয়েছে ইনফর্মাল সেক্টরে, সেটা কিন্তু এই ডেটা আপনাদের কিন্তু পলিসি লেভেলে ইনপুট দেওয়ার সুযোগ রাখতে পারে। সো ইমিডিয়েটলি ডিসেম্বর মাসে একই ধরনের একটা সার্ভে, যে লিমিটেশনস গুলো আমাদের ছিল সেগুলো যদি আমরা সারাই করে নিতে পারি, আমরা কিন্তু ন্যাশনাল লেভেলে পলিসি ইন্টারভেনশনে ভালো রোল রাখতে পারবো। এবং ভয়েসটা দরকার, কারণ হচ্ছে যে এখানে অধিকাংশ মানুষের সঙ্গে যুক্ত। আমি যে কেসটার কথা বললাম অ্যাকাউন্টেবিলিটি ইস্যুজে, ইট ইজ এ টোটালি পলিসি সবই আছে, কিন্তু ম্যানিপুলেশন হচ্ছে। উই হ্যাভ টু বি রেজ দ্য ভয়েস। পলিসি মেকারদের কানে এটা পানি দিতে হবে আমাদের, হ্যাঁ, কারণ এখানে 1.5 কোটি পরিবারের সঙ্গে যুক্ত, দরিদ্র পরিবারের সঙ্গে যুক্ত। তারা সাফার করলে গভর্নমেন্টও সাফার করবে, গভর্নমেন্টকেও এই জিনিসটা বুঝতে হবে। হেড অফ দ্য স্টেটকে প্রপোর যখন গ্রোথের কথা বলছেন, ইনক্লুসিভ গ্রোথের কথা যখন বলছেন, পলিসি লেভেলে সবকিছুই আছে, কিন্তু ইমপ্লিমেন্টেশনে গ্যাপস গুলো থাকলে এই রেজাল্টটা কিন্তু আপনাদেরই নেগেটিভ হবে। সে কথাটা আমাদের দায়িত্ব বলার, নেবার দায়িত্ব তাদের। ধন্যবাদ আপনাদের।
Thank you, Shakot bhai. I think those are my areas that আমাদের একটা কন্টিনিউয়াস স্ট্রাগল, এটা এই জিনিসটা করতে, এটা একটা স্ট্রাগল হিসাবে আমি দেখি। রিসার্চ পলিসির ভাঙা সেতু, এবং এই ভাঙা সেতুকে কিভাবে আমরা স্ট্রেনথেন করব, এটা এক মৌসুমের ব্যাপার না, এটা একটা রিলেন্টলেস স্ট্রাগল, এবং এটা একটা কন্টিনিউয়াস একটা ফোকাস রাখতে হবে। আমরা মানে এইসব আলোচনায় অনেক মানে একটু আনকমফোর্টেবল হওয়া দরকার, কারণ ওই ডিসকমফোর্টটা না হলে আসলে ওই রিলেন্টলেস স্ট্রাগলটা আসে না। এটা একটা স্ট্রাগল।
সরি, আমি সেই জিনিসটাই করছিলাম, আমি সেই জিনিসটাই আপনাদের করবার চেষ্টা করেছি। থ্যাংক ইউ।
তো আমার মনে হয় থ্যাংক ইউ অল ভেরি মাচ। আমি জাস্ট শেষ করার জন্য কয়েকটা জিনিস, যেটা মেনাজও বলেছে, আমরা শাকত ভাই বললেন, সোশ্যাল সায়েন্স অফ ডিজিটাইজেশন, এটা একটা বড় এজেন্ডা আমাদের মানে বিআইজিডির জন্য। আমরা এটা নিয়ে খুব জোরে সোরে কাজ করতে চাই, এবং দীর্ঘমেয়াদী কাজ করতে চাই, প্রোগ্রামেটিক অ্যাপ্রোচ থেকে কাজ করতে চাই, নট আ প্রজেক্টাইজড অ্যাপ্রোচ, একটা প্রোগ্রামেটিক অ্যাপ্রোচে আমরা নানা ধরনের জিনিসপত্র একসাথে করে আমাদের কনটেক্সটে যে প্রশ্নগুলো জরুরি, সেই প্রশ্নগুলোকে ড্রাইভ করার জন্য একটা সোশ্যাল সায়েন্স অফ ডিজিটাইজেশন রিসার্চ এজেন্ডা আমরা তৈরি করতে চাই এবং কাজ করতে চাই। সেটা আমাদের চলছে, এবং সেটার ধারাবাহিকতা হিসেবে এই কাজগুলা, যেটা মেনাজ বললো, যে এগুলা বেসিক্যালি ফরমেটিভ, ইনিশিয়াল, ডিসক্রিপটিভ, ডায়াগনস্টিক্স ধরনের কাজ। এখান থেকে যে আমাদের প্রশ্নগুলা আসবে, এবং সেখান থেকে তারপরে আমরা আরো রিগারাস এবং ডিপার কাজ করতে হবে, যেটা কোয়ান্টিটেটিভ এবং কোয়ালিটেটিভ নানা ধরনের মেথড ব্যবহার করে। এই ক্ষেত্রে আমার মনে হয় শাখাওয়াত ভাই যেটা ওই বিগ ডেটা এবং অন্যান্য ধরনের ডেটা, শুধু বিগ ডেটা না, ওই আমাদের আসলে ডেটা ইনোভেশনের অসম্ভব মানে ধরনের দরকার। এই ধরনের ডিজিটাইজেশন নিয়ে কাজ করতে গেলে আমাদের আসলে ডেটা সম্পর্কে আমাদের যে প্রথাগত যে ধারণা, সার্ভে বেসড সার্ভে করলাম, সেখান থেকে ডেটা আসলো, তারপর সেটা দিয়ে আমরা অ্যানালিসিস করলাম, সেটা থেকে আমাদের অনেক বেরিয়ে আসতে হবে এবং 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 সেটার জন্য আমাদের নতুন স্কিল সেটও গঠন করতে হবে। সুতরাং এটাও আমার মনে হয় অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। সুতরাং আমাদের ডিজিটাইজেশনের সাথে সাথে বিআইজিডির আরেকটা বড় ক্রস থিম্যাটিক থ্রাস্ট এরিয়া হচ্ছে ডেটা ইনোভেশন। সুতরাং ডিজিটাইজেশন এবং ডেটা ইনোভেশন একটা আরেকটার সাথে অঙ্গাঅঙ্গি ভাবে জড়িত। আমরা সামনে যে কাজগুলা আপনাদের সামনে আনবো, একটা হচ্ছে আমরা ডিজিটাল লিটারেসি যে সার্ভেটা হয়েছে সেখানে অ্যাক্সেস টু সার্ভিস, 50টা সার্ভিসের অ্যাক্সেস নিয়ে আমরা আমাদের ডেটা আছে, সেটার আসলে অ্যানালিসিস আমরা এখনো শুরু করি, মানে মাত্র শুরু করেছি অ্যানালিসিস। তো সেগুলো আমরা ধারাবাহিকভাবে আপনাদের কাছে আনবো, বিভিন্ন ধরনের সার্ভিসগুলোকে ক্লাস্টার করে করে। ওই সার্ভেটা আমার মনে হয় ভেরি রিচ সার্ভে, এবং এটাকে যদি আমরা বেস হিসাবে লংজিটিউডনালি কন্টিনিউ করতে পারি, দ্যাট উড বি ফ্যান্টাস্টিক। কিন্তু এই 50টা সার্ভিসের উপরে আমরা আমাদের ওখানে ডেটা আছে, আমরা সেটা নিয়েও আপনাদের সামনে আসবো। আমরা একটা ডিজিটাল রেডিনেস স্ট্র্যাটেজি প্রিমিয়ার ম্যাক্রো লেভেলে এটার উপরে কাজ করছি আমরা। সেটা একটা একদমই ম্যাক্রো লেভেলে, একদমই পলিসি মেকারদের সাথে আমরা, মানে ওদের ওনারশিপে ড্রিভেন বাই দ্য পলিসি মেকারস, একটা ডিজিটাল রেডিনেস স্ট্র্যাটেজি প্রিমিয়ার তৈরি করার কাজ করছি সরকারের সাথে মিলে। আরেকটা পার্টিকুলারলি আমরা ই গভর্নেন্সের কনটেক্সটে ই নথির উপরে একটা আলাদা একটা রিসার্চ হচ্ছে, এবং এখানে আমরা মোর পলিটিক্যাল ইকোনমি, ইনস্টিটিউশনাল ইকোনমিক পার্সপেক্টিভ দিয়ে এই ই নথির এফেক্টিভনেস এবং এটা ডাইনামিক্স গুলো বোঝার চেষ্টা করব। এবং এখানেও আসলে পিটফলস গুলো কি হতে পারে সেটাও, কারণ ডিজিটাইজেশনে পিটফলস গুলো আমাদের খুব গভীরভাবে বুঝতে হবে, এবং সেখানে যেন পিটফলস গুলোকে অ্যাভয়েড করে আমরা আগাতে পারি, সেটাও অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। কারণ আমরা ওই মানে ব্লু আই, মানে কি বলবো, ক্লিয়ার আইড মানে হতে হবে, নাইভ হলে এখানে হবে না। কারণ অনেক ডিজিটাইজেশন, ডিজিটাল ইনোভেশন এক্সিস্টিং পাওয়ার স্ট্রাকচার এসিমেট্রিকে আরো ইনইকুয়াল করে দিতে পারে, এবং তাতে গরিব মানুষের আরো ক্ষতি হতে পারে। সুতরাং আমাদের সবসময় একটা স্কেপটিক, একটা সোশ্যাল সায়েন্স পার্সপেক্টিভে দরকার আছে, যেন পিটফলস গুলো আমরা বুঝি, এবং সেখানে যেন অতি আগ্রহে মানে আপনার ইনোভেশন গুলো না হয়, সেটাও কিন্তু অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। সেটাও একটা আমাদের একটা ফোকাস এরিয়া থাকবে। তো আমি এই পর্যায়ে আপনাদের সবাইকে মানে ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে শেষ করছি। Thank you everyone who have kind of joined us from around the world in God-forsaken time zones. Thank you all very much, and we will keep on engaging with you. We'll complete the report based on the kind of remarks that we have gotten from you. One of the reasons for this is not only to disseminate, but actually to finalize the report. So we'll be finalizing the report, sharing it with all of you, and then there is a larger strategy, larger ambition that BIGD wants to pursue in terms of this digital social science of digitization, and creating a platform, an epistemic platform to sort of advance this and to influence and inform policy. So thank you all very much.